Hello guys, and welcome to yet another video. So, as you all know, today is our no-sleep day, so that means that we're going to be reading some horror today, and I hope that it scares all of you to death, because it's honestly pretty terrible. The first one's really weird, and the second one's really weird, but I think that the second one's better. I'm not even sure why I decided to read these a month ago, but I did. So, our first story is literally called My First Tinder Date. Interesting enough. It's by user /23 ASDF26. No caps. I don't understand. So, my first Tinder date. On a quest to find lasting purpose in this ephemeral life, I decided to look for love. And for someone who's as socially awkward as me, I can't expect to just stumble across a starry-eyed guy who proves to be everything I've always wanted in the middle of the street. So I decided to take the more modern route and installed Tinder on my phone. Yep, you heard that right. Maybe I could find some real connection there. I guess it's not as bad as people make it out to be. I created a profile, wrote an elaborate bio, and began swiping. Yawn. Most guys on there were way too boring. Cliched bios, cringeworthy pictures, and cheesy pickup lines. After about a day, I was done. Just as I was about to uninstall the app, I found this one man. He was a 20-year-old who was well-built with a smart bio, and we matched. The conversation flowed easily. There was an instant connection, and I felt as though I had known him all my life. We joked about our traumatic past and exchanged TV show references, and he wasn't one of those creeps who was desperate to hook up, so I actually felt comfortable talking to him. We stayed up all night texting and decided to meet that weekend. We're going to go to a Starbucks and hang out and see where it goes. It was incredibly excited to meet this guy. He was cute, smart, funny, empathetic, the whole package. I wore my favorite black dress, did my hair, and put on some dark red lipstick because he believed girls who wear red lipsticks are hoes, and I wanted to prove him wrong. I went to the Starbucks, deliberately a little late, but I couldn't spot him. I texted him, and there was an instant reply. "Turn around," it said. I took a deep breath. This could probably be the first time I'm meeting the man who might as well be my soulmate. I turned around and gazed into his brown eyes that shone like pools of honey in sunlight. He had a perfectly chiseled face and an alluring scent of cigarettes and cologne, and some chemical I couldn't quite place. He was wearing a crisp white t-shirt with sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His hair was neat yet messy, in this weirdly charming manner. I looked at this guy, and I was incredibly attracted to him. "Hey," he smirked. He had a deep voice and an accent that I couldn't place, which I assumed was a South African accent, since he had told me he grew up there. We ordered coffee and had a long conversation, and before we knew it, 3 hours had passed. We spoke about our lives, our past, conspiracy theories, the universe, and so many more intriguing issues. He wasn't just physically attractive, but provided an incredible amount of intellectual stimulation as well. I thought maybe he could be the one. At the end of the date, he said he had fun, and he'd love to go out with me again. Now, I wore red lipstick to prove I wasn't a hoe, but I was really attracted to this guy, so I asked him to come back to my place. He laughed and suggested we go to his place instead, since it was closer. We took a cab and reached his place, which was 10 minutes away. It wasn't exactly how I pictured it to be. It was this old, dilapidated structure with empty plots of land all around it. It was isolated in a sense, but I trusted him. The insides of the house weren't at all like the outside. It was clean, well-lit, and well-decorated. There was a stronger odor of the aforementioned chemical here, but I didn't pay too much heed to it. He asked me if I wanted a drink, and I just asked for a Coke, so he got me a glass of Coke with 3 ice cubes. We spoke for a while. I finished my drink, and before I knew it, his soft lips were against mine. His arms were wrapped around my waist. In the midst of making out, I felt so dizzy I asked him to stop, but he didn't. I was disoriented. Something was up. I tried to get up, grab my purse, and leave, but his muscular body had a strong grip on mine. The last thing I remembered from that incident was his attractive, chiseled face approaching mine. I woke up with a start the next morning, and I was in my bed, back home. I had no idea what happened or how I got back in my room after being drugged by a Tinder date. If he drugged me, why didn't he rape me or murder me? Why did I end up back home, tucked into my bed? I texted my friends, and they told me it was probably just a nightmare, but I knew it wasn't. I was terrified, and the first thing I did was uninstall Tinder. I tried texting him, but I couldn't find his number or his details on my phone or on social media. I could have texted him on Tinder, but I had just deleted my account and I couldn't recover it. Brilliant. I felt like I was going crazy. I went to shower and I found weird marks on my body. I found scars that weren't there before and bruises in uncharacteristic areas. I was terrified and this entire incident didn't make any sense to me. I went to work, but somehow I felt different. I felt as though something was different about me, and my friends and I decided to go to the mall in the evening, and as I stepped through the metal detector at the entrance, it went berserk. It inexplicably began beeping loudly, but since I wasn't carrying anything, the security personnel apologized and told me that it was probably the machine's fault. That night, I had a terrifying nightmare. I was on a table in this unbelievably bright room, and there were unidentifiable creatures around me. Tall, gray creatures with no discernible facial features. The room smelled of the same chemical as my spooky Tinder date. These creatures brought surgical equipment close to my skin, and right as they were about to cut into my stomach, I woke up. I lifted my shirt, and I saw one of the aforementioned scars at the exact same spot. I have watched too many conspiracy theory videos to now understand what is happening. There is only one plausible explanation. I was abducted by aliens, and they have inserted a probe of some kind inside my body. My Tinder date was a member of an alien species so advanced that they can take on the physical appearance of other life forms. He mentioned such creatures when we discussed conspiracy theories, and in reality he was alluding to himself. He pretended to be this perfect man for me to lure me into going back to his place, so his kind could use me as a subject to perform experiments on. The metal detector went berserk because of the probe they have implanted inside of me. I am now being surveilled by this alien species, but no one believes me. I'm gonna be honest, man, I don't know if I believe you either. I know that NoSleep literally says it's a subreddit for realistic horror stories and everything's true even if it's not, but like, fuck, man. That sounds like a mess. But we're going to move on to our next one. Now this one is a little longer and a little more interesting, I think. It's about a video game. It's called Hell Online. It's written by user/Bob the Butcher. Bob, Bobtha Butcher. Bob the Butcher. All cats. This one's definitely a little bit more fun. So, without further ado, we'll read our second story of the day. I do hope you all enjoy Hell Online. I greatly envy the people who have fond memories of their first job. I certainly don't. I didn't know it, but I was going to be contributing to the company a lot more than I thought. I had high hopes going into it. Whenever you get a job you actually want, instead of one you just took to pay bills, it feels rewarding. You think you might be one of those few lucky people on planet Earth who hear their alarm in the morning and react with excitement and not dread. They are a much bigger company now, the people I worked for. Big enough that we call them jukebox games instead of the household name they really are. I've had enough misery from all this without getting sued. Knowing those cruel bastards, I bet they would fly here personally to enforce an NDA. All I can say is I was a back-end programmer, and it was at a time a very small game development company. I thought I was one lucky, nerdy bastard. First job straight out of high school. What 19-year-old kid wouldn't want to work there? I love games with every fiber of my soul. I, however, had never programmed for a job company before. I was in for a rude awakening. I can't be too exact about what stuff I worked on, but as you may have figured due to my age, I wasn't too high up. And then again, the company was only 32 people total at the time, I think. In-house funding and everything. It was the definition of a startup. Of course, back then, we programmers just called most of them shitty people to work for. To put it bluntly, game devs have it easy nowadays. We didn't have shit like Unreal Engine and reliable HR back then. I felt particularly bad for the design guys that did animations at first. One playable character in a decent game might have 600 to 700 possible movements, maybe even more. Some poor guy had to sit there animating that shit for hours, and if you worked for Jukebox, you made fucking peanuts no matter what you did. But couchsurfing didn't become me. I needed my own place. I soldiered through. People would quit and get fired left and right, fed up with the grueling and ridiculous schedule. Outbursts were frequent. No lunch or smoke breaks, eat at your desk. Only Fridays off, no weekends. It got to a point where almost none of the people who worked there when I was first hired were still on staff. We have to make the investor money back fast, they say, or everyone is in big trouble. We're a bunch of nobodies, and we're lucky to be working here, they say. They were smart, and purposely selected losers who couldn't work anywhere else. It was true. I was one of them. Why didn't I make a stink about the conditions? Well, sadly, teenage me wanted that $12 an hour bad. Simple. There was, in my mind, no other way to get it. But one other motivation for being a scab was that the game we were working on was actually kind of interesting. Even sort of cool. The first and last of its kind, in fact. It was called Hell Online. I can say the name. After all, it was never released. I would find out later it was never made to be released. It was possibly the most toxic, most scary, most difficult, and altogether best game I have ever played. And also the worst, for other reasons. I can't get too specific about what year it was, but this was back when visually stunning games first started to really appear, in my opinion. And this one was indeed stunning. It was what you would call today a mid-sized MMO, although it was much simpler than MMO games as you would know them today. It even had elements of Battle Royale games that you wouldn't be seeing again for years. You played as a customizable demon character in Hell. The only way I can describe the imagery to you is a mix between Doom and scary stories told in the dark on steroids. The landscapes rivaled Dante's Inferno. The red wastes and towering angular buildings made Mordor look like Super Mario Sunshine. It was a foul, disturbing, dark, CG masterpiece. The object of the game was to progress downward through the different circles of hell by brutally torturing detailed naked human NPCs in a bunch of different gory ways and fighting bosses. I won't get too specific here, but remember, I said gory. The screams and cries of pain they made were oddly realistic. If you listened in close when the first beta came out, you would notice the audio samples were of slightly different sound qualities. This led to a rumor that the cries of pain were real and were secretly recorded in hospitals. I hope it was a rumor, but I doubt it for reasons you'll find out later. There were over 100 different voices that corresponded to the individual NPCs a player could capture and torture. They even had names and a specific list of sins they had committed in life. You got more points if the torture lined up with the character's sins, and the NPCs were guilty of worse crimes as you descended, until, when you got far enough down, you started to recognize a few names, like Stalin, John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, you know the crowd. The famous ones had their own special tortures you could do. For example, my favorite, you could kill Hitler over and over with gas. Can you guess what you got to do with the rapists and pedophiles? I remember thinking as I was pecked furiously away, creating the scroll menus and setting windows for the most depraved creative options, they were going to have to make a whole new rating for this fucking game. That being said, I couldn't wait to play it when testing started. Then there was PvP. This is where the game really came into its own. You see, along with the NPCs, you could also capture players and other demons if you beat them in combat. The combat system itself was amazing, as fluid as Halo or Call of Duty, but theirs was only close quarters combat. The demon characters had different scary-looking bladed weapons and grappling hooks you could throw to catch players or NPCs, all ultra customizable with character progress. You could also toggle first person and third person at will, and the transition was seamless. This was unheard of at the time. The weapons also got more complex and powerful as you progressed downwards. You could be in the middle of trolling somebody and then some asshole grapples you and instantly you're fighting for your life. If you defeated another player in combat, they were stuck in your clutches, and unlike an NPC, you get the same points no matter what torture method you use to torment them. On top of all of that, there was a constant line of game chat where players could type to each other. It was ingenious, because they also awarded players smaller bonuses for being tortured, so there was incentive not to rage quit. You would still get points for finishing the round that might be crucial later. The game was designed so that you have the most stressful and unrewarding experience, but at the same time, it was unbelievably fun and addicting. You wanted to keep playing no matter how much it shit on you. The game was just as centered around being griefed strategically as it was around outright griefing of other players. There were no teams until the end of the round. At the end of the round, 6 players are left alive based on points earned. The remaining players have to team up to defeat a huge boss, one of the Dukes of Hell. Once again, the artwork on those fuckers made them look terrifying. But after this, of course, in the next round, some dead players with enough points could spawn back in and earn redemption bonuses, creating even more anger and chaos. You could be on top of the leaderboard 1 minute and be on the bottom if some random idiot caught you slipping. But in all the rounds of testing, nobody got to the final pit of hell. Nobody could beat the second-to-last boss, Asmodeus. We complained that he was too OP, all the way up to the pre-alpha, but nobody listened. He would just ask you, what's the meaning to life? And just destroy all 6 players by chopping them up after they typed answers. Supposedly, the last boss was Lucifer himself. I asked the design guys what he looked like, but they said they were NDA'd about it. It looked like they were hiding something as they avoided the topic at all costs. Strangely, besides me and a few similarly desperate programmers, the art design guys were the only ones who stayed on for the whole ride. They never complained, they simply laughed to each other and seemed to get along like old friends. Maybe they were, for all I knew. We programmers didn't exactly have too much time to socialize with anyone unless we took the extra money to also be testers. For some reason, the company liked keeping everything in-house, as they put it. More like save money by offering small bonuses to the studio scrubs instead of getting real testers. I jumped at this, being that I genuinely liked the game. I mean, really liked it, and needed all the cash I could get. It turned out the best players among the staff were me, some kid from marketing, and of course the design guys. We usually made it all the way to Asmodeus before getting devoured and punching our monitors. That's another thing that was off about this game. It made people livid. Like, think, getting your huge city that took weeks to build on Minecraft griefed, but times 10. It was almost like PvP experience was made for this. The mechanics worked in such a way that you only had 1 life per round, like search and destroy, except camping was nearly impossible, and if you got caught and tortured or killed, the only points you got were for staying logged in and getting tortured. Only people who made enough points progressed, so the maps got slowly smaller. This game was rage-inducing to levels I thought impossible. We had to start logging in and testing it from home because fights would break out in the studio during testing. I've never seen a game like this before or since. There was a lot of other strange things about this game. For example, there was no hype about it anywhere. It was a good game for how aggravating it was. I thought for sure there would be protests about it even. After all, it included more NSFW shit than Jerry Springer and a Serbian film. I thought it would get banned before they released it, but nothing. Not even a spot on G4. If anybody has to aggressively market before a product release, it's game companies. They make a shit ton from pre-orders alone. That part made the least sense. One night in June, the final round of testing began, except this time I had a secret weapon. Me and this guy named Greg I had become friends with were going to beat the game and make the design guys look like idiots. In our little off time, we had thrown together a mostly complete version of the game that we could edit. Complete except we altered the script so we could brute force the Asmodeus balls into giving us the answer. We were less than surprised when it turned out to be nothing. The boss dies, and we were greeted with a half-finished door with no option to open. I knew it. Those design guys, dorks, were behind schedule. This was going to be epic. So me and Greg battled our way to the end that night, along with 4 of the designers. The NPCs looked different this time. Their names were the same, some spoke different languages, their faces were more detailed, and instead of just cries and yelps, they said whole words. It sounded real. The whole game looked more detailed and vivid. Damn it, those turbo moves must have made another patch and finished the door, but the studio was closed all day. This didn't make sense. Everyone was so white-knuckle concentrating, nobody but me trash-talked in the chat. I'm a sucker for some good old trolling after all, even if I might miss a shot while spewing some filth. But then, if you didn't have a good auto-talker for text chat, you were failing at life. But this is something I should have noticed as a red flag. Then we finally got to the end. Before the boss could even move to attack us, we both typed nothing, and sure enough, he dies. But this time it was different. The door was finished, and now it was down a long hallway. A large sign in red Gothic letters said, "Only one may enter." An instant fight erupted for the door that ended with me as the sole survivor. I've never been so satisfied as when I was pulling out Greg's eyeballs with my character's claws. Sorry, buddy, but I had to open that door. There was a brief loading screen, and I found my character standing in a black void. In front of me was the most beautiful, black-haired woman I've ever seen. It didn't look like CGI anymore. She looked real. "Do you like these kinds of games, Jimmy?" she asked. The voice sounded like beautiful music through my speakers. It was so beautiful I wasn't even disturbed she knew my name. I did notice my bedroom was starting to get unbearably cold, though. At first I thought it was the abysmal weather. "Sure," I typed. I had no idea what to expect this point. I could see my breath now. Fucking air conditioner. "Silly boy. This was no game. The others have peace now. You'll live with the knowledge of what you've done." I typed. "What do you mean? I won." "Silly, silly boy. The game was only part of the rite. Look what you've done." Suddenly, my screen was full of videos of the other testers getting torn apart by invisible forces on their couches or office chairs, and my voice cackling and mocking them as they died in agony. They were getting mulched in the exact same way I had done in the game. When I saw Greg, my friend, sitting in his PC getting his eyes lacerated, fuck, I thought we were going to joke about it at the bar the following day, and I'd buy him a shot for the trouble and show him the screenshots of Lucifer, but now I knew it all happened for real. Everyone who played that night died in real life. Everyone but me. I was a mass murderer? How could I live with myself? Jesus Christ! I racked my brain for solutions, but like a complete simpleton I typed, "Why?" The woman, who I now knew to be the actual Lord of fucking Darkness, aka in real life Satan, smirked and said, "Your employers. It takes great sacrifice to rule anything in this world. Men used to perform by rights for kingdoms of land. Now they perform them for kingdoms of industry. Who am I to judge them? If they prove their worth, I give them what they ask for. GG, Jimmy." I passed out. I woke up and the power was out. I walked to work in a hurry. I didn't want to be late. I had slept in. I had hoped it had all been a sick nightmare. It was wishful thinking. The office was locked. On the floor was an envelope of cash and a single pink slip with my name on it. The envelope had a message scrawled on it in marker. "No one will ever believe you." And sure enough, over the years, that company has exploded. You probably owned one of their games. Their games all mimic Hell Online in certain ways, but none come close to its level of disturbing content. Probably sure enough as well, you don't believe me. I haven't wrote a line of code since. I still don't know exactly what happened. Hell Online was never released, and I can find no information on it anywhere. Just the same as when it was in production, but after all, it wasn't a game. It was some arcane rite, some black magic grab for corporate power that transcended all I knew or chose to ponder of the universe at that time. So now you know. It's eaten me up for so long. Evil isn't a game.